All right, we are live. Thanks for tuning into the Sheet Metal Shaping podcast, where we discuss the pursuit of sheet metal shaping education through traditional coach building techniques. My guest today on the show is Mr. Clark Gillie of Clark Gillie Customs. What's up, man?
Hey, how's it going, man? Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited for this. I love your background.
Thanks. Yeah, it's me too. It's a fun place to work.
Lots of good stuff there. The Pettingill hammer. I see some CGC lit up in the back.
Yeah, I got a bunch of welding hoods back there. I got both sides of that hammer. I got a pullmax. It's all sheet metal shaping on this side of the shop.
No way.
That's my CP on a stick right there. I don't know where my
Wicked.
finger is, but that guy right there is just a CP hammer on a stick. I love that thing.
Yeah.
Cable. Super simple. Works really well.
How big is your shop?
What's that?
How big is your shop?
5,000 square feet.
Nice. It's a nice size, eh?
It's I kind of got it set up for like 3 to 5 people, and then COVID happened, and I just had a kid, so it's just me.
Yeah,
I got some people to come out of Moonlight, but I'm not like hiring anybody full time, so I'm flexible with the new kid. But yeah, it's a lot of shop.
Wicked. Well, today we're going to talk a little bit about the multifaceted skills of a coach builder. So I went through your website, dude. Your website has a soul. Like, it's just so well.
Thanks, man.
It's so well. For anybody that hasn't seen his website, go and check out the site. It's so good.
I gotta update it.
It's good. There's all kinds. You got all kinds of projects there, chopping tops and metalworking and everything in between. So that's what we're going to touch on today. But tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm honored to be on this podcast. First off, it's you've got some really big names on here and some really talented people. It's really cool to see, and it's been fun checking them out. Thanks for having me. Yeah. I've been let's see. I wanted to be a sculptor when I was a kid, and then I became a mechanic at one point, and then a buddy taught me how to MIG weld, and then kind of slowly, like my professional career has arced back into metal shaping, which is a form of sculpting, basically. And I opened my shop in 2010, and out in California, out in Los Angeles. And I moved out to Colorado here about 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. Got the big hammers and stuff, and been just kind of like just trying to level up and progress and learn more and more and more. And it's been an adventure so far. I mean, it's always an adventure learning and metal shaping. And
that's right.
I'm very fortunate. I get to do something I love every day. And
isn't that huge?
I can't ask for more than that. So
isn't that huge? Being able to say, like, get up in the morning and be excited to go to work, if you could even class that as work,
No, it's the best. It's the best thing ever. And
you think people miss that in modern times? They get up and they go to the grind, they do their 9 to 5 or whatever, and they come home unhappy. It's because they're not being fulfilled in some manner.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know a lot of people that do this kind of work, and it's running a business is really tough for me, anyways. And but I know a lot of people that are super happy, terrible business people, but they get to work with their hands and create every day, and that's fulfilling. So
one thing that I came to learn over the years is that just because you're self-employed doesn't mean you're a business person. Like, you can be a great artist, right?
Yes.
And then not be able to make the books line up at the end of the month, or vice versa. You're so business focused, but you lose that soul, right? Like we talked about, like you lose that creative side. It sounds like you got some both. You got a little bit of both.
I got I've failed a lot, and the more you fail, the closer you are to success, So like, I've failed so many times and put myself in a bad spot in business repeatedly, underbidding something or whatever. And what I've learned, the way that I look at it is that it's like one foot is making the thing, and the other foot that's going to move you forward is being good at the business part. So a while ago, I realized that I'm really terrible at the business part. And so just got a little bit more self-awareness about it. Started really looking at that more, even though it's a lot less exciting than hammering some sheet metal,
For sure. So, what was it like to move your shop from California to Colorado?
It was horrible. I mean, moving always sucks. Even when it's good, it's bad, And I moved 30,000 pounds of cars and equipment.
Wow.
And went from like a 2,500 square foot shop in North Hollywood to a 5,000 square foot shop out here. And now I have I had an Englishwheel at the time. I was doing a bunch of sheet metal, a bunch of air ride, and now it's pretty much all sheet metal for the most part for people out of state or a couple local people. But I've upgraded, so when I move again, it's gonna be really rough. I got like a giant frame table. I got this one big hammer column, and then I got a smaller hammer column I'm putting together. I had a pullmax when I moved out here and some planishing hammers and stuff and an Englishwheel.
Yeah.
But moving's the worst, man. It's the worst.
If you move again, you're going back to hammer and dolly. Pack it up in a toolbox.
Yeah, that's right.
On the road.
Yeah, just put for sale signs on everything.
Everything.
Yeah. That's why they put wheels on toolboxes, right? Just roll it all onto the next spot. And, so.
Sheet metal, form, function, flow. This is a quote on your website. I love that.
Thanks, man.
What does this mean?
Well, it's I mean, sheet metal is such a fun medium to work in because and I've heard you touch on it on your podcast before, but you know, there's all the different aspects of it. You got people building race cars, people building lead sleds, or you know, anything and everything under the sun, and it's so fascinating how you can have something that's sculpted out of Bondo or fiberglass or pie cut 300 times, and there's so many different ways to get to town. And at the end of the day, it's got to look right. It's got to have that you know, soul or whatever, that flow. It's got to be fitting. And so like the concept and the execution are two different things. And so really I try to get the two of those to jive as well as possible and try and make it so that, you know, I don't, you know, I'm always probably my harshest critic and look back on things and go, oh, I would do that differently now, or I don't like how the light moves across that panel or whatever it is. And to try and get the two of those to mesh perfectly is, I mean, that's a lifelong pursuit, you know? So that's kind of, how I see that really.
Where did you learn this?
I'm mostly self-taught. I went and took a class from Ray back probably like 2015 or so. And Ray's an amazing teacher, innovator, and he's got a really good way of explaining things to people and getting a point across to people. But I was doing it before I took his class. I bought my pullmax the week before the class. The thing was blown up. And I restored it for a week, turned it on, ran a bead, and then I went and hopped on a plane and went out to Ray's. And
That's so funny.
He, of course, you know, we show up and he's like, "Pullmaxes are terrible."
Yeah, he's
like,
such a wheel guy. He's like anything that reciprocates. He's like, "No, I don't do that."
Totally. So I'm like, "Oh man, I just spent all this money and time, and you know." But and I've always been kind of like a tinkerer, so I've been making sheet metal stuff. I used to work for somebody else years ago, and it was more of a sheet metal fabrication shop rather than metal shaping. And there's a pretty big distinction between the two of those. So, but yeah, I've always gravitated towards being able to create something. You know, I never had the money growing up to buy anything that was like super high value. So I always had to like customize stuff to try and make it cool that way. I never had like the rare parts on something. It was always, well, I did this thing that's different that I like. So kind of led into it.
Let's talk about chopping tops. So there's three key things that you do. One of them is chopping tops. Tell me a little bit about that. Where do you start when you're chopping a top? As a coach builder, as a multifaceted artist, coach builder.
Man, so the first thing that you do when you're chopping a top in my shoes, and that's all just my perspective, is number one, I underbid it. So you get that out of the way. You don't have to worry about making any money on the thing. And then typically lately I've been like cutting entire windows out and making the entire window for the sides, for the quarters and the door tops, making entire door tops. But I've got a style that I like with the windows, and I like to kind of rake it towards the back, kind of that speedboat kind of look.
Nice flow. Yeah.
And then and depending on what I'm doing, we re-chopped a Chevy for a chop class, and it's pretty cool. I had a guy on Instagram hit me up and say, "Hey man, you should have rounded this corner." And it was pretty awesome. You know, it was like, and the post he sent me was like 8 months old. Wow. So I was like super flattered. I'm like, wow, this guy's looking at this thing and thinking about it. And, and he's like, you know, approaching me about it. And we know some mutual people, but I don't know him. And so it was really cool. I was able to like kind of describe my thought process through that car, but we ended up rebuilding like the whole top of the car, the package tray, the catwalk, the back quarter window, the front window. And through that, we, you know, when you're chopping, that was a 51 Chevy. And those cars, you got to kind of pick, for me, I got to kind of pick my lines. So I got the roof line, got maybe a drip rail if there is a drip rail there, and then a window opening. And then those three lines are going to kind of spread it out and set the motion for the whole car. So, you know, I want it to look like it's going fast went standing still basically, and just have that thing where you don't necessarily know that everything's been chopped and squashed or anything like that, but
Yeah.
it's just different, and hits
But
differently. So
it's cool that guy reached out to you. I mean, some people would take offense to being like, oh, he's criticizing my work.
yeah,
But it
yeah,
sounds like you're thinking, oh yeah, that was a great idea. How about we change this, change this dimension, or change the way that it tapers, whatever. Like, that's awesome that you're able to internalize and say, yeah, that's a good idea.
yeah, it was really cool. He treaded pretty lightly at first, and then I was like, hey man, I'm not getting defensive, but like I was waiting for a weld to cool on something or something. I'm like, I have a little bit of time. And so I have 3 of those Chevys in this shop, like there was similar
Oh,
year.
no way.
So I said, well, that corner that you want to see curved, and I sent him 2 pictures of 2 other ones where they are curved, and explained the whole thing and where the back of the drip rail comes down, and the weight in the windows, and the proportional weight to the thing, and why we chose to do that one that way. And it's just a little tiny sharp corner that most people wouldn't notice, and it caught his eye, and he asked about it, and by the end of the little conversation, he was like, he said something about crawling back under a rock or something. No, I'm not offended, but
Yeah.
I'm honored. It's cool. I mean, that's art, right? If somebody looks at it and they form an opinion about it, love it, hate it, whatever, that's at the end of the day, from an art perspective, like that's a pretty good goal.
Yeah.
Hopefully not everybody hates it, but
One of the things that I always took from Chip Foose, like in some of the Chip Foose videos that he puts out and like his Instagram and YouTube and stuff like this, he always said, I want people to know that I've customized the car, but I don't want them to know what I've done.
Yeah, that's very well put.
I'm just like, man, that is so smart, right?
Yeah.
If it stands out, people go, oh, something's different here. Something's not right. But if it's just, it's a nice subtlety, people go, wow, wonder what this person did there. That's nice.
Yeah. And that's kind of how I got into the coach building aspect of it, was that I was chopping tops on Chevys, and most cars, when you chop the top, you end up creating a bunch of problems, and then you got to solve the problems. And the solution often is to just move the jigsaw kind of pieces back to where they fit. And I started kind of moving things to where I wanted it, like a B pillar. I'd slant the B pillar more. I'm 6'3". For me, I don't want really a car that's super chopped.
Yeah.
And so I would maybe chop it a little less than someone else and slant the B pillar a little more. And at the end of the day, you have something that's got a different feel to it when you look at it. Yeah. And then it's slowly just snowballed from there. But,
let's talk about the jigsaw puzzle. So not every chop is just cut the post and drop it down. Like sometimes you're doing a zigzag on the roof. Sometimes you're doing different profiles. What happens there, and why do you do that?
I just remake everything. This is why the bidding doesn't work so well. I remake everything. I've got a car that I made the entire roof for. I make the entire door top, and it's and that's just what I want to do, and that's what my customers. I'm super fortunate. My customers have been really cool about it, and let me kind of run with that vision. But yeah, I don't know. Some of it's just the challenge of solving that problem and making that part, making those pullmax dies or whatever. And then a lot of it's like really liberating to look at a car and go like, I'm not looking at it for like what's going to fit. I'm looking at it going, how do I want this to look? So it's kind of a different deal at that point. And trying to push more into coach building with the hammers and the transition from the Englishwheel to the hammers. It's changed how I look at a lot of the stuff. But yeah, eventually, hopefully, it'll be a whole car before too long. But yeah, that's a big reach.
If you could pick a car, what would it be?
It'd be someone from the 30s, some Art Deco 30s, 30s, early 40s, maybe.
Big bulbous fenders and love it.
Yeah, there's definitely like a sweet spot in design, and those cars are just so beautiful. Rick Dore's done so many of those cars.
Oh yeah,
are just gorgeous, So
I'd love to have Rick on the show. Rick, if you're listening, my goodness, get on the show.
It'd be awesome to have him on the show for sure.
Those big teardrop fenders, they swoop back, right?
Yeah. Just the entire thing just oozes class, and to build something where the whole thing's been built. It's not, is there, that question's not there anymore. It's like that person built that, and I like this and don't like that or whatever. But it's that's a really big statement to get to that point. So
how has your productivity changed when you go from the wheel to the hammer?
Oh, it's night and day for me. And I had a wheel. I built it. I had Hoosier profiles, uppers. Big shout out to Joe and Peggy at Hoosier. Anybody that's building a wheel, like, that is the best stuff in my opinion. I built my own wheel years ago, and wheeled a lot of panels.
Yeah.
The problem for me with the wheel is that owning my own business, I'd had to pay somebody else to run the other side of that wheel on a big panel and teach them and all that kind of stuff. This morning I was hammering a panel that's taller than I am. So I'm 6'3". So this thing's, I stand it up next to me. It looks like I've, came back from a big fishing trip or something. And I'm hammering out a weld on it by myself, get it up there. And, so it's a lot more versatile for me. And then the productivity is just absolutely incomparable for me. And that's been my experience.
You prefer, even though it's noisier, you prefer that hands down.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I put some earbuds in and absolutely, I mean, I see your wheel back there. Like, I don't know what the anvils look like, but when I had my wheel, I had polished anvils, and it's stuff that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about, but, I would clean my panels before I wheeled them.
Yeah.
And I'm not working to a wood buck usually. I mean, I guess I am more these days, but back, doing a chop or something, you cut the car down and then you're filling that gap with a panel. So you're test fitting something on a car 300 times. And if the car's rusty, you don't want that rust back in your wheel. So every time I test fit, clean the panel, clean the wheels, wheel it through there, get that mirror finish. And that alone is a slow process.
Yeah.
The hammer, you can wipe it off real quick. Typically I'm oiling a panel on a hammer so I can make marks right there in the oil. I don't have to get a Sharpie and draw on it. I can get in and just adjust one little spot. Today I was hammering welds in the middle of this giant panel, and I wouldn't have been doing that with the wheel. The hammer has its own stanchion. I mean, it's like if I'm standing in front of this thing, that's holding weight also, and then my two arms. So now that panel is a lot more stable, and my shoulders, instead of doing this number forever, now I'm mostly working back and forth, and so my shoulders get to get smoked in a different way than they have for the last 10 years, So, but yeah, the wheel's the hammer's super, super, super versatile. Very big difference for me.
What do you prefer to spray your panels down with? Are you a kerosene guy, WD-40?
I have, from planishing, I was using ATF and WD-40 for a long time.
Yep.
I think I've got WD-40 and gear oil for the hammer panels. But
everybody likes something different. It's funny. Everybody likes something different.
Yeah. It's just, well, I think it depends on the climate too, because if you have it, sometimes the WD-40 all evaporates and then it gets too super sticky.
Right. I never thought about that.
Yeah. I'm in the desert and it gets cold here, and I'm from Los Angeles. So every winter I get super dehydrated because it's cold. It's nice. I don't realize it's dry. And I'm like, so it's probably the same with the oil. It gets hot out here too, and stuff evaporates.
Let's change gears to prototyping and design. You had mentioned doing some prototyping and development work and design and things like this. Is this still prevalent in your business today? I saw this on your site.
Yeah, thank you. Not as much. Definitely in Los Angeles, Southern California, I did a fair amount of that stuff. I had a guy with like a little like a Segway kind of project I built for him. Did some stuff for some space companies. Built a ladder for a spaceship, a little ladder to get in there and get out, and for a mock-up. That's awesome. Liked it so much they changed the real ladder to match that ladder.
That's so funny.
Pretty cool. So not so much these days. Mostly it's just the prototypes are one-off metal shaping parts for cars. But
going back to automotive, you talked about coach building as well earlier in the show. So in terms of coach building, like what's the difference between a hot rod guy and a coach builder in your perspective?
Well, I mean, it's one's about the what it's wearing, like I don't the car is cool and everything that goes underneath that builds a car, all the suspension and all that. And I've built a lot of that stuff, but at the end of the day, my number one thing is how that car looks more than, I mean, they have to run and drive right too, but it's I'm not trying to race anybody at this point in life. I want that thing to look cool, and if it's fast, cool, but no, it's all about how it looks. It's all the aesthetic,
That's what people see when they walk up to your car in the parking lot at a car show. Like that's it. Does it look good or does it not? That's your first intuition, right?
Yeah, and it's it can look a little less like a Hot Wheels kind of over the top, kind of thing, and a little bit more like something that's refined where somebody's saying like, what kind of car is that? Not,
Mm-hmm.
you know, what motor's in it. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
Another quote that I got from you here: "We blur the line between automotive and art." Tell me about this.
that's an aspiration. It's some of that stuff. It's I wrote it and populated the website with it. And I'm like, so sometimes I hear it. I'm like, yeah, that's a little pretentious, but yeah, I mean that's the aspiration, right? Is to like try to make something that you know, make a car that somebody comments on and has an opinion about it.
Mm-hmm. Any skills that you've learned over the years that you think are transferable to other folks? Like if you were first starting out, what is the most important skill that you think you could have learned
Oh my
going
gosh.
through your journey?
Well, I'll tell you, if I started over again, I would take a class on business first and try and free up and more time to build what I want to build so that I could end up getting more of that through customers.
Really?
But I mean, the main thing is just to be open. You know, I learn every single day. I learn. I've done a couple of chop workshops out here, and I learned so much stuff from all the students. You know, it's like you just got to remain teachable in this business because it's solving problems, and there's always different answers and different problems. It's never the same thing, you know, forever. And just mostly being teachable about stuff.
Where do you think people go wrong from the business perspective? Like, what do you think it is about this industry or trades in general? Like, why do people go wrong with the business side, but they're so brilliant in other aspects?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I was hoping you'd have the answer. Oh
yeah, it's I don't know, man. It's a tough deal because you put your heart and soul into something, and now it's art. And then somebody says, "Well, I want to pay. You know, I got no problem paying for $4,000 wheels. It's this tangible thing they bought that they can then sell, but they don't want to." You end up getting into a beef with somebody over a $400 bill sometimes, and it's like, you know. And so I mean, I've had so many fantastic customers, but from the business side of things, like sometimes people will beat you up over something, and it's hard to separate yourself from it because you put yourself into it, you know.
Sure.
So it's, I don't know, man. It's a tough line of work in that regard, at least for me.
It almost becomes an identity at that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, this is the thing that I've created. This is now born, and somebody doesn't appreciate or doesn't prefer what you prefer. Like there's a mismatch, no?
Absolutely. I got a pettingill tattooed on my leg. Like it's, you know, I mean, I'm here hammering stuff. This is definitely who I am. It's, you know, it's definitely a big part of the identity because at the end of the day, I'm an artist. So, you know, if maybe I'm a bad artist, I don't know. That's not up to me to decide. But like, I'm definitely not a business, you know, mogul or whatever. And at the end of the day, I'm in here just doing my art and doing my thing. And that's so yeah. I mean, that is my identity. Same as, you know, somebody that's a politician. That's who they're always going to be. They're always a politician.
True.
You know, it's some careers are just like that.
When you come at your projects, do you come at it from the art perspective or the business perspective first? What is the first
art.
thought?
It's always art.
Really?
Always art. Yeah. Years ago, I had this predicament that I'd find myself in where I would start working on something and I would see two paths I could do. And one would be cheaper and one would be a lot nicer in my mind or better for whatever reason. And whenever I would do the cheaper path, I would double back and then do the nicer path ultimately anyways. So somewhere along the line, like I try to always stay learning stuff. I was like, this is what I end up doing anyways. So I'm just going to throw out the cheap way and not do it that way and pursue that one that I really want to pursue anyways. Take that hard road or whatever to get that design or whatever it was. So yeah, it's like I've got a lot of just stubborn stuff like that where and you have to be hard-headed in this business, I think, because you know failure is a big part. You get a big pile of scrap metal, and then you know over the years the scrap metal pile gets smaller and smaller, and then you're like, yeah, okay, I got this, and then a simple panel will kick your butt, you know. So,
it's funny. I had Ron Koval on the show, and we talked about a couple of panels that he had changed and he struggled with, and you know, like even people who are extremely proficient at doing whatever it is that they do, whether it's art, automotive, motorcycle, aviation, you know, building ladders for UFOs, like whatever, right? Like stuff still happens. Like you're not always perfect.
Well, and panels read differently. Like I've been working on 30s and 40s cars, 50s cars for 10 years, you know? So I moved to Colorado here and I had a customer send me It was like a 71 or 72 Dodge Dart.
Hmm.
And that thing had totally different shapes than what I'm used to, like reading with my eye, my hands, totally different than what I'm used to working with, where like I start asking myself, is this thing going to hold water? Is this a reverse curve? Because it's just laid out in a totally different format than I was used to working on it. And a lot of the muscle car stuff is kind of like that. And for me, because of my perspective on it. But yeah, there's always
if you're coming from like a 30s Art Deco era where everything is very bulbous and voluptuous, then you go to a muscle car where everything's relatively flat with body lines and things. Different perspective. Right?
Totally different. I did the underneath the back window on that thing, and it was a big reverse curve, and it didn't read as one when I looked at that car. I'm like, this thing's slab sided. It's like it's just it's just a different shape.
How do you adjust your skills in a circumstance like that, where you say, okay, I'm used to making spaghetti, but now I have to make pizza. They're both Italian, but completely different dough.
Well, make a couple scrap metal panels and kind of move it from there. Go back to the basics. Take some steps back to the basics. Make some patterns, and kind of slow it down a little bit. But usually, I get my ass kicked first, and then kind of circle back. So
waste a bunch of time. You're like, gotcha in the head.
But all that's learning. I mean, none of it's a waste at the end of the day. If you're learning and paying attention, and it's just part of it.
Any preferences on pattern type? Working to a buck, flexible shape pattern, paper. What do you like?
I use them all. My paper patterns are pretty rough. Paper is it's flat. Metal's flat when you get it. That's kind of where the similarities end. Metal's very elastic. Paper's not. And a hard triangle on a piece of paper doesn't tell me as much as making a piece of scrap metal does. Mm-hmm. I like the tape patterns a lot. I usually, since I'm doing like lots of chops and stuff like that, I'll end up making a sail panel for one side, and then I might have a super rough paper pattern for that. I won't make a buck for that typically. And then once I have the one side where I really like it, I'll use the flexible shape pattern, and then you can flip it over and replicate it for the other side, and that works pretty well. If I'm doing a door skin or something like that, wood bucks for sure. The low crown shapes are definitely a lot easier to do with a buck. I've made bucks out of steel, all kinds of different stuff.
Yeah. Do you prefer the wood or the metal? What do you like better?
The wood. The wood. It's more work up front, but then afterwards, it's just got a much nicer feel to it when you're test fitting stuff. It reads a little better. So
it is nice that you can router it, CNC water cut it, like whatever it is you prefer. Whereas the metal, you have to you got to build it, right? Like that's it.
Yeah. Well, I've got a bandsaw I use for all my wood bucks, and then I have a heck trace-a-punch machine. So once I get one station out of metal, I can copy all the other stations with it. It's pretty quick.
I've never heard of this. Ooh,
yeah, it's
juicy. Tell me.
It's a fun. It's like a pullmax basically. It's just a nibbler that traces off an edge and nibbles the piece below it. So, so with the first one, you gotta actually tune with a Beverly shear and file or whatever, and then from then on, if you've got like a 22 sweep repeated over a door or something, you can go through and copy and trace them. But there's a lot of people just do this stuff on a computer. It's way faster. But it's only faster if you know where you're going.
That's a different skill set too.
Yeah, definitely is.
It's gonna take you out of the shop and into the onto a laptop. It's like a new world.
Yeah. But hopefully when you're making something on a laptop, it's going to look right when it's done. You're right back to the concept and the execution. I've seen a lot of computer generated stuff that is fantastic, and I've seen a lot that needs a lot of hand tuning.
Man, this has been so much fun. From this side of the mic, to see your tenacity and your genuine like just your depth of knowledge in the industry is really cool. The fact that you come at it from a business perspective and an art perspective and like a hands-on perspective, I think is so cool. And it's rare to see that. I think, like we talked about in the show, there's people who are artists, no business savvy. There's people who are business savvy, no art, no emotion, right? And you found a way to blend the two. So from me to you, thank you so much for being on the show and for doing this today. Where can people find out more about you?
Well, thanks for having me. I've got a Facebook. I go on Marketplace and search for tools, and that's it. And then Instagram's kind of like the main. It's Clark Gillie Customs on Instagram. And then I've got a website flying around somewhere as well.
You do.
But my phone number's right there on Instagram. Very approachable. When people message me, I try and get back to people and answer questions, help people out, and and learn some stuff. I learned stuff from everybody. So thanks for having me, man.
Awesome. Well, thanks for checking out the podcast. Don't forget to like, share, follow, and subscribe, and we will catch you on the next episode.